Welcome to Military Faith and Spiritual Resilience. This is Elizabeth Fulgaro. With me today is Alexandra Siliezar, sister of former U.S. Marine Abraham Siliezar. Thank you for joining us today, Alexandra.
Thanks for having me back.
It's been wonderful to have you sharing the very poignant and important story about your family and especially about your brother, Abraham. And so we've been talking a little bit about really how he suffered, how his PTSD led him to a place where he couldn't work as much, and then he ended up being injured, which added to the brain injuries, and his medical battles and how hard you worked as a sister who loved him to have a legal right to advocate for him. But let's talk a little bit about Abraham when he wasn't in the hospital.
Yes.
Like, where did he live? And then when did you guys see each other? What were your relationships like?
Well, my brother, because he had worked with the housing task force before, and he also had worked with plowshares, before. He knew that he went to a social worker and had asked for assistance, and he stayed in a VA supported housing, as he would always say, I live in a VA supported housing. And he did have a lot of struggles, but he lived independently and he wanted to, but he wasn't really able to. And everything is hindsight's 20/20, as they say. And I wish I had had more of the availability time-wise to actually have him live with me. And I didn't have that ability. And I thought that where he stayed, at least he had eyes on him during the day, whereas I wouldn't have if he lived with me because I work in a different county than where I live. And so that was challenging. He and I became incredibly close. And what a gift. Because in the 5 years that I had him post his injury, he began to call me nightly. And it became a routine that he looked forward to, and so did I. And every time that the phone rang and I would hear his voice, I would literally go, he's alive.
Oh, my goodness.
I always fear the phone ringing and saying he's in the hospital, because that happened. Mm-hmm. If I didn't hear from him by a certain time in the evening, I would start calling him and my stomach would churn 100 miles an hour probably, and faster than that, waiting for it to be answered, and not answer, and call again and call again. And if he hadn't answered after a few times throughout, not much after dark, because my brother never liked to be out in the dark, I would begin to worry. And I would begin to call hospitals. Do you have this person in your ER? No. Next. Do you have this person in the ER? No. Next.
Very hard.
And sometimes they would say, yes, he's here. And I would go, okay, at least he's safe. At least he's not in the street bleeding somewhere. He's safe. And that happened a lot for 5 years. So when he called, and I would say, hello? Sister, this is your brother. This is your brother, Abraham. And I'm like, I know who you are.
Yay.
I'm like, yay. My brother, And then I would hear the same stories he told me every night. And that was okay. That was okay because he was alive to tell me the stories he told me every day. Mm-hmm. And he told me the stories of when he was in the military, how he joined the military, conversations he had, the trauma that he experienced.
Did he share the trauma? Was he now sharing the things or just saying that he had things?
He would tell me, but they were curated. I think that he was still being the big brother somewhere down deep in there.
Protecting you from it. Mm-hmm.
He would not tell me details, but he told me enough, and he would cry. And as the therapist that I am, I would both listen, try to empathize, and at the same time tell him, but it's not happening right now. And that's not really a good therapeutic thing to say, but I wanted him to move on because it was every single night as well. And I would say, but Abraham, you're not there right now. I know. I know it hurts. But you had to do what you had to do to survive. You had to do that so you could be here and you could meet your niece and you could be with us. You had to do that. It was your job to do that. And you're a great Marine. You were a good Marine. You did what your job asked you to do. And I try to help him that. I try to help him forgive himself for the things he had to do in the job. The trauma and the issue that came up, and it just shows you both his love for his family and his faith and his need, that where we met every week was at our church, and it's primarily 99% Filipinos. And he always had a hard time going, but he would come. And one day he told me how hard it was for him, because he thought, do they know what I did when he was a Marine in the Philippines?
Oh, my.
And seeing those faces always reminded him of the work as a Marine in the Philippines.
Super hard.
And it was hard. But he would do his best and still show up week after week to both see his niece, see me, and hear the word of God. He would always say, in those repetitive conversations of people with both dementia and TBI, he would say, forgive my drawbacks, shortcomings, and limitations. And I would say, you're fine. There's nothing wrong. You're normal. You're fine. You don't have drawbacks and limitations, Abraham. But he would say that a lot. And then he would say things like, I know I'm a sinner. I know I'm a sinner. But Jesus, he came down to save sinners like me.
Oh, my.
And I said, yes, he did, Abraham. And he forgave you, so you need to forgive yourself. You are fine, and God has you. And he loved Jesus. He was not a religious person. He was not a church person, but he loved Jesus. And our last Thanksgiving, in between a recent hospitalization with seizure and more brain injury, following another big bad seizure right after that, in between those, my daughter videotaped him. It was Thanksgiving, and said, Abraham, Uncle Abraham, what are you thankful for? It was Thanksgiving. And he said, I am thankful. And he couldn't even really pronounce thankful anymore. I think it says like, it sounds like thankful or something like that. And he says, I'm thankful and grateful for the great life the good Lord has given me. And he never, ever complained. And whenever we spoke on the phone, he would say to me, I'm not complaining. I'm not complaining. On the contrary, I am grateful and thankful for the good life the good Lord has given me. And he said that so many times in our conversations in the last 5 years. And I think he never once in those 5 years asked me, who was that person that hit me? Or how dare that hospital reject me? Or did you know this happened to me with the MPs? Or did you know that I had a seizure and I was thrown out of the bus? Or did you know that I'm bleeding from my forehead? Or did you know that people robbed me? Because he was robbed all the time. He was robbed. Every time he had a seizure, his wallet went missing.
Oh, gracious.
And sometimes he would fearfully tell me, I know you're not going to like it. I
Oh,
know you're not going to
no.
like it. But sis, I don't know what happened to my wallet. People knew. And, sometimes I'm like, don't worry about it. Sometimes I'm like, Abraham. It was not his fault. But he never once put blame on anyone else. And he would diligently call me, even if he had probably had a seizure earlier that day. He would call me at 7 p.m. just to say, sister, this is your brother.
Oh.
How are you doing today? And if he called, sometimes probably a little past my daughter's bedtime, maybe something had happened to him in the community and he came home late, without telling me what had happened, he would say, how's my niece? Is she sleeping? I know she's asleep. But would you do me this favor? Just do me this favor. Would you tell her your Uncle Abraham loves you very much and to sleep with the angels? Because to me, she's an angel. Just do me that favor. He said that every single night. So to this day, a year and a half later, I still tell my daughter, remember that Uncle Abraham loves you very much. And now we know that he's an angel.
How was your daughter with Abraham? How did she see him?
She adored him. Mm-hmm. He adored her. He always said, I know I'm not her father. I'm not her mother. I'm just her uncle. But I love that little girl. I love her if she were my very own. I just don't know why, but I just love her so much. She loved him just as much. But she was little. And sometimes I would notice that she felt uncomfortable around him. And I wanted to protect her. So I didn't really tell her the times that he was in the hospital. There's no need. I didn't need to tell her all the hardships. I needed to protect her and still have a healthy child, a happy child, an innocent child. So when I saw that she felt uncomfortable, I tried to minimize contact, which I knew was hard because all he wanted to do was see her more, and I thought I was protecting her. In retrospect, we've had these conversations with her. She says, Mom, it's not that I was afraid of him. I was afraid of what could happen to him. Because she saw him have seizures twice, and it traumatized her. It has changed the way she sees herself, life, him, safety. And she's deeply traumatized, and we're working through that. And God will heal. I know that. But it's something we're struggling. In that relationship, because she knew that she was, she would hear from him every night. There was a time where the conversations or the phone calls stopped. They stopped coming. And I didn't say anything to her. I just pretended like nothing. Oh, he called, but you were sleeping, or, And weeks went by. Now I know that I haven't shared what's happened.
No, yeah, it's to come.
But she knew something was wrong.
Did she miss him? Did she miss that contact?
Absolutely. I think that conversation happens almost daily. But I tried to minimize the conversation because of the trauma. Because it's not just a sweet memory. It's a traumatic memory. And traumatic memories hit at a very different level than just having lost someone that you miss and you can reminisce of the happy times and the laughters. She doesn't have a happy memory. She has memories of seeing her uncle have seizures.
Can we continue talking about that in the next segment?
You got it.